marches that I attended, that is the 12th and the 19th of February marches, to interview people to try to understand what the grievances were broadly giving rise to the protests. And I visited one day a slum in Algiers, a neighborhood known as Bab el-Oued, which was a stronghold of the Islamic Salvation Front during the terrible 1990s. So I was taken by activists from an NGO, a wonderful NGO called SOS Bab el-Oued, to what used to be a parking garage, but was turned into what I can only term so-called housing. And I visited, among others, a young couple who lived in 2 Spartan rooms with their infant. My friendly hostess told me that her husband works as a security guard. She laid out her daily difficulties. My husband, she said, earns 10,000 dinars a month. That's about 130 US dollars. My son's milk costs 300 dinars a can, about $5. It only lasts a few days. His diapers cost another $750 dinars. That's about $10. How can we feed ourselves, she said. She tells me there are women nearby sleeping on cartons in the street, and she warns that things could explode here. She supports the marches, but she's not able to participate. She shows me how she plugged the gaps around her windows to protect her son from tear gas during early January's riots, and she says it will be much worse than January if it doesn't change peacefully. Several days later, on February 19th, 2,000 protesters again took to the streets, demanding that very peaceful change that the women in Bab el-Oued were so hoping for. This morning, again, they took to the streets, although unfortunately the opposition is now split in Algeria, so only part of that cohort took to the streets. But again, the women activists, I just talked to them, some of them on the phone, were kicked by riot police, some of them were beaten, were prohibited from arriving at Martyrs Square, where they were attempting to protest. This time, were again threatened with sexual assault by the counter-protesters, and they so deserve our solidarity in what will be an ongoing and long struggle for justice in Algeria. Now, I tell these stories for a number of reasons. The first is that I was deeply moved by what I saw, and Algeria is simply not getting the attention that some of the other countries are, perhaps understandably, given, for example, the terrible level of violence in Libya. But also, I think that these social movements are some of the most significant human rights developments of recent years, and I really just couldn't take the floor here today without speaking about them. But I also tell these stories because I believe that they are directly relevant to the topic at hand, which is applying what we have learned so far about culture, religion, and human rights in the work of UN Women. You see, no one on the streets of Algiers was making a demand based on culture or religion. Like women on the streets of Tunis and Cairo and Tehran in recent weeks and beyond, these women's rights advocates were demanding, and sometimes simply taking possession of, their universal human rights. Freedom of expression, freedom of assembly, freedom of bodily integrity, economic, social, and cultural rights, the right to political participation, freedom from discrimination. When I visited Bab el-Oued, none of the poor women I interviewed talked about religion or culture, which are, of course, integral parts of their daily lives, which I don't deny for a moment. But what they were concerned about and wanted to tell me about were their struggles for basic human rights. Unanimously agreed to recommend the suspension of Libya from membership in the Council due to the gross human rights abuses by its government. The Human Rights Council actually showed political, institutional courage. This is an amazing moment. What I hope, and I believe that this will be the case under the leadership of the wonderful Dr. Bachelet, what I hope, and we will have to support her in this, is that UN Women will show this sort of institutional courage at every step in defending the principle of universality, in challenging religious fundamentalism, which I didn't even have time really to say much about. And this will require what Sharifa Khadr, one of the Algerian activists, called a more courageous politics, something that even the UN Human Rights Council has shown this week to be possible. So I'll stop there, and thank you very much.